This is London Calling. You're listening to me, Tash, on Buccaneer, your source for what they don't want you to know. This time we're turning our focus back on the media to look at my former employer, the GBB. As we know, the broadcaster has been through a lot of changes since the Hassani government gave in to pressure from his corporate backers and privatised the corporation. Today, the GBB is a shadow of its former self. It's become a tool used by the government to circulate fake news and misinformation. So how did we get here? Where did it all go wrong? How can we tell when our national media has become state propaganda? Our experts speak on conditions of anonymity for their own safety. Here's disinformation and media expert Charles, who's seen free broadcasters built up by journalists and torn down by demagogues all over the world.
So before the media fragmented, there was this voice of authority that was trusted and worthy of trust. Then what we ended up with is a really commercial model where whether you're talking about an app on a smart device or whether you're talking about a broadcaster, the most important thing was to keep you in that environment for the longest amount of time possible, and because that meant money in their pocket. And in order to do that, a couple of things happened. One was the use of manipulative techniques around behavioral economics, things that would just keep you scrolling or keep you listening or keep you looking for more information. The second is that kind of environment favors sensationalism. And so you got more sensational headlines and more sensational stories, and it didn't matter whether they were true or not. It just kept people in and it kept them in the loop. So we ended up in a situation where nobody trusted anything and nobody believed anything at all. And that is the perfect environment for an authoritarian voice to come in and say, no, wait, we are the truth. So the ground for this environment really got created when we had suddenly authoritarian politicians everywhere, and anything that threatened them or they disagreed with, they would call it disinformation. That's disinformation, that's fake news. And again, we got in a situation where nobody really believed anything. And the trouble is if you were telling the truth, it's very hard to get your message to cut through all of the noise of all of the disinformation that's there. So like, you'll remember Out on the Edges, there was this story about when they would take a house by force, they would take any infants and they would crucify them. And that's a great, fantastic, viral story. And how do you counter that story? With the truth. The only way you can counter it is by saying, no, they didn't. And of course, no one wants to spread that story. No one wants to hear that story. They want to hear the sensationalism. They want to hear how people were victims of violence when in fact they weren't. Or they were victims of insurgent forces when in fact they weren't.
The news isn't neutral, it's a battleground. Here's media researcher and academic Alfie.
The media has, of course, been perhaps the key way in which governments have controlled and influenced their populations. So, totalitarian countries have typically used huge mainstream media outlets to sell one kind of news, one kind of biased news to its population. Of course, the media has always played this kind of key role in methods of state control. I think what's happening now is perhaps even more concerning, where you previously, in pre-crisis Britain, we had perhaps more diverse voices in the media, but now with the GBB, you're really only seeing one brand of news and therefore only getting one truth. So people end up with a very biased and controlled idea of the reality and the world that we're actually living in. There was, of course, many concerns and many problems, but in a way there were some positive things that, like, not all information was coming from one place, and so you'd have kind of far-right media outlets developing and then left-wing media outlets developing to combat those and kind of challenge the mainstream newspapers, TV stations, radios, and make sure people were questioning the validity and truth of the information they were receiving. So whilst there was the digital afforded more fake information, it also made makes us suspicious and skeptical of information and makes us question the information we're getting. And I think in pre-crisis Britain, it might not have seemed great at the time, but there was something positive about that there was a lot of distrust in the media and in the different kinds of truths that were being told. Whereas now, I think you're seeing a return to a more traditional and older pre-digital sense, actually, of people just trusting what they're told, and that's why we have to be here with radio stations like this to challenge those conceptions. Most citizens feel pretty hopeless, I think, and unable to fight back against these kind of huge mainstream corporations that simply entrench and support the ideals and ideologies of the state. It can seem very hopeless indeed, but I think, the fact that you're out there listening, we're in here talking, shows that there is still a space to combat these false truths and disinformation that's being sold to us, and that it's never possible really to completely shut down, despite all the technologies that they have at their disposal and all the financial and corporate power and all the physical power. It's never quite possible to shut down people's desire to get to the truth and fight for their own ideologies and values, and we're out here starting that task, so don't give up hope.
You've been listening to Buccaneer with me, Tash. We'll be back soon with more of what you'll never hear on the GBB. Keep listening, keep sharing, and keep resisting.
I'm Claire Waters, and we've been discussing the hacktivist, now alleged terrorist group, DedSec, on this week's Buccaneer Radio. I have Colin calling in. Colin, what's your take?
Now, I've been saying from the start we should have rounded up DedSec and thrown them in jail. Now, I'll say they should all be lined up and shot.
You don't find it awfully convenient that they've been fingered as the attackers, but we've seen no proof?
Look at Tone! Look at our city! What more proof do you need?
Well, Colin, I'd say you have to look at their history of non-violent action. Albion's put more civilians in the hospital in the past few months than DedSec ever has. I smell a scapegoat. Now I have Emily calling in. Emily, what's your take?
You're absolutely right, Claire. The government's just framing DedSec because they want to make it seem like they have this under control. They probably have no clue who was behind the bombings. But that doesn't look good on the news, does it? DedSec's been a thorn in their side. Who better to pin it on?
Angie, I have you next. What do you make of all this?
I think, if anything, DedSec showed their true colours. It's terrifying to think we harboured such a dangerous element for years. Terrorists in our own backyard.
Do you find DedSec more frightening than the different gangs in London, like Clan Kelly?
Clan Kelly might set your shop on fire and maybe they'd kill you, but even they wouldn't try to blow up all of Parliament.
Next, I have Crypto King. Do you feel safer using a pseudonym?
Everyone should. Why make it easier for them to track you? And now we've seen what they're capable of and how far they're willing to go.
Hold on. Do you mean the government? Are you suggesting the government was responsible for the bombings?
Oh, trust me, Claire. They didn't do it alone. They're all in on it. The government, Albion, Sirs, Bloom, Skye bloody Larson, and all the way up to Downing Street. They want to keep us scared, harness us with mind control, suck every last ounce of usefulness out of us, and even in death they'll sell off our bodies.
And what do you suggest we do, Crypto King?
Go underground. Deep enough, no electric signal can get you. It's the only way.
Well, thank you to all of our callers today, and thank you for tuning in and scouting for the truth along with me. Next week, Buccaneer Radio will be diving into the Albion Corporation. Just who are these men and women being paid lucrative amounts for the city's defence? Are they protecting us? Protecting London? Or someone else's interests? See you next week, fellow pirates. Claire Waters, out.
Welcome back to The Upload. Today we're talking about cryptocurrency. Crypto now seems like it's been around forever, but it's really quite a new invention. Were you an early adopter?
I was one of the first that was in this market. There seemed to be a new way of financial transactions, a new way of money. It's something that we could completely reinvent and change some of the legacy financial systems around the world and really give power back to the people.
Yeah, it was a real shift in the way that the world works. Let's recap the basics. Central to cryptocurrency is the distributed ledger technology, the tech that keeps track of all transactions. And what this means is you can have a decentralized system without having to trust any one party, like old-fashioned banks.
One of the reasons why I got involved so early was that you could stay anonymous.
Yeah, the features of cryptocurrency very much fit into that early mindset. It was all about finding an alternative to centralized systems. It was kind of a countercultural punk ethos. The whole point of the distributed ledger is you're not trusting any one person to keep a track of who has what money or how they're spending it. It's all out there in the open for anyone to see, and yet you can remain secretive.
But not everybody now wants to keep up this crypto legacy. They don't share this attitude anymore. We've seen institutions, businesses, even governments experimenting with crypto, which doesn't really fit into its original radical counterculture mold.
Yeah, it's kind of weird today to think of people not using cryptocurrency. It's so mainstream now. You know, I'm almost nostalgic for the feel of cash. Good old-fashioned paper and coins. First they changed the paper notes to plastic notes, and now it's just all digital. There's nothing to hold on to.
It was great just to be able to have a little bit of money to carry around with you.
I think the turning point in the UK really came a few years ago when the pound dropped 10% over just one season. People living off grid started using crypto, and just as everyone was losing faith in the pound, they were gaining it in cryptocurrency, which turned out to be much more stable. Kind of the opposite to what people thought in the beginning.
And then, of course, there was the recession. It didn't take long for startups to see an opportunity in this new way of doing finance. A lot of traditional money was converted to crypto, and it really shook up the financial sector.
Can you remember when they first introduced crypto cash points?
That was really sneaky. It was a classic startup behavior. They just installed them everywhere. No consultation with the government, no approval or anything. But people immediately started to use them.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of how Bloom put out the Optic. They just made it free and flooded the streets with these devices. Suddenly, everyone had them.
If there's this great option of tech, people are just going to start using it, no matter the cost.
Parliament actually tried to put a stop to the cash points, but people were using them so much already. There was outrage. I mean, some parts of London were already using crypto as their primary currency by then.
And now, apparently, or at least in theory, crypto is illegal.
Yeah, in May this year, economists found that crypto was being traded more than the pound, and banks were not happy. They basically forced the government to ban cryptocurrency in a last-ditch effort to save the pound.
But it's not like that's worked. People are still using crypto, and it's been pushed further, deeper underground. Things used to work fine with crypto, and it was just a peer-to-peer sharing economy-style system. Now it's all on the dark web and wrapped up again in organised crime.
Yeah, if you want to make something thrive on the black market, just make it illegal.
This is London Calling. You're listening to Buccaneer, your pirate podcast source for what they don't want you to know. I'm Tash, and this time we're giving a special shout out from us to the boys and girls at the Signal and Intelligence Response Service, better known as SIRS. Why not? They're going to be listening anyway. They're listening to everything. They probably know that you're listening to this show right now, but don't worry. We're not going to say anything bad about a massive, unaccountable spy organization that uses its powers to stifle dissent and shut down free speech. Instead, we're going to look at how SIRS became so powerful. And as usual, we'll keep everyone's names and location secret, so SIRS doesn't come looking for them. Charles is an expert in the dark arts of surveillance who worked to set up democratic media in post-communist states. How did it go so wrong in Britain?
You know, we're looking at all the wrong things when we look at Britain's crisis. There's a lot of concentration on data and how that's been used and manipulated. And what we haven't looked at is the power structures and the profit that lies behind this. For example, if we examine what actually happened, there's a company that's really very interested in selling passports and making it easy to provide visas for investment and so on. And historically, throughout the world, they've been working with this big data manipulation company in order to overthrow governments. And then suddenly all the chickens came home to roost. Nobody could find any receipts for what was paid for. Nobody could figure out how things were done, but everybody had a feeling that something really stunk, and they couldn't figure it out. And yet, it was standing there in their face the whole time. There's a couple of different ways that we got where it is that we are. I mean, one, you have a lot of smaller organizations, smaller power groups, companies as well, who are bending things just a little. We'll compromise a little bit, we'll bend the rules a little bit, and try to achieve what it is that we hope to achieve that's good for us. And if you add all of that up, what you end up with is a big wall moving in a big way, from a lot of little buttons being pushed. But also there's this other thing that's going on here, is the gathering of data and the analysis of data has authoritarianism contained within its DNA. It is by its nature a tool for authoritarianism, and it has been used in that way.
How does big data look into our lives? James covered it for the pre-crisis press.
We're starting to see the merger of private data and that with data held by the state into what are called social credit systems. This is where every aspect of your behaviour is monitored and totted up by a central system to sort of score you as a person, a bit like a credit card, but predicated on all of your behaviour rather than just the money you're spending. And this can have profound impact. We're starting to see systems emerge which will punish you and stop you from doing things in society based on your behaviours, and this can be as trivial as if you jaywalk, if you cross the road in the wrong place, you might lose points. If you do some community activities or help your neighbours, you might earn points, and then this can be used to sort of evaluate you as a person. And this could mean, for example, better travel privileges, being able to travel first class, or being denied from travelling first class to not being allowed to travel at all. These systems are very real and very possible because of all of the data that is now held on us.
Ian was a veteran political writer and podcaster back in the days of pre-crisis Britain.
Is the world we're living in now fascist? Well, this is what fascism is. It is the complete and total control of the individual. The desire to basically say to the individual, nothing in your life matters. On an individual basis, you are now part of the whole, part of the nation, and the only meaning that you will find in your life is to become part of the nation. What is a nation? A nation doesn't mean anything, right? The nation is basically just encapsulated by the leader that takes over, that claims that he, has this sort of access to the soul of the country, to the soul of the people. He never does, it's just a myth, but that's what they go for. And on that basis, they take the right to control every aspect of your life, from who you talk to where you eat, to where you go to hang out with your friends. And what we're seeing now is a contemporary iteration of this process where you get corporations and the state operating in tandem, basically molded into one another. But that isn't that rare. I mean, you saw exactly the same thing in Nazi Germany. You look at the concentration camps that operated in Nazi Germany, there were private companies in those camps making use of that slave labor. Fascism often works with corporations, and it's doing the same now. That's the way in which they track what you do. That's the way in which they track who you talk to. They operate as each other's proxies.
So if your ears are burning and you think someone might be watching you, you're probably right. They're watching all of us. I'm Tash, and you've been listening to Buccaneer. Keep listening, keep sharing the show, and keep it encrypted. They're watching us, but we're watching them too.
Coming up today on The Upload, we're talking about Skye Larson, the enigmatic founder of Broker Tech. Everyone knows her name, but no one knows too much about her. And we only really see her these days as a hologram. She was pretty young when she launched Broker Tech, the company that is best known for introducing Bagley to the world. Nowadays, it's hard to remember a world before Bagley.
And I think that what Skye Larson's done with Bagley is absolutely incredible. Bagley is the most advanced, significant AI of our time, and it's really blown all the other AIs that were created out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really imagine the optic without it. But what do you know about Skye Larson herself?
Not a lot, other than that she's actually pretty incredible. I've followed her work for a long time, and she's always been a pretty private person. I know that she supposedly grew up in the countryside, but there isn't actually that much more we know about her other than this tech that she's put out into the world.
I've always found it a bit creepy that she's so obsessed with this idea of transhumanism.
Why wouldn't you be? When you've got a mind as amazing as Skye's, why wouldn't you want to take what you've got and actually augment it by working with technology, by improving your physical self, changing your body and the world around you, implementing more technology to extend your life and really sort of extend human capabilities?
You sound pretty much in love with Skye Larson, I have to say.
I can't comment on that, but I am a big fan of her work. She's been one of these people that has transformed the world around us, and just watching how her mind works from afar is pretty incredible, because some of what the technology she's introduced has changed how we all live our lives, and Bagley has been this really incredible assistance to humanity as a whole. Did I ever tell you that I actually interviewed Skye Larson once?
Really? I thought she never spoke to the media or anything.
So this was a long time ago, back in the day when she was a little bit more accessible. And she was one of these people that just had an amazing presence. You were inspired by her very being, and she was just incredibly talented and knowledgeable, and one of possibly the best living people that I've ever met.
I'm not sure you're being too objective there. I mean, I imagine she's not very likable as a person.
She obviously despises humanity in some way. I think she believes that becoming data is preferable to being human. She's one of these people who's extremely methodical in everything that she does, and she does everything to perfection and really tries to change the world around her and make it a better place for us to live in.
If you say so.
This is London Calling. You're here with me, Tash, on Buccaneer, your source for what they don't want you to know. In today's world, we've all had to get used to our every move being tracked by the optic on our temples, by the cameras around us, and with every click we make online. Seems like everything we do feeds the big data beast. Why are data giants like Bloom so hungry to get hold of our private information and our metadata? What are they using it for? Will we ever have real private lives again? What is privacy in the digital world? And what happens when capitalism and surveillance become one? As you know, we keep all names confidential on Buccaneer. Speaking from a secure location, here's new technology strategist Charles, who worked all over the world trying to keep democracy strong in the face of the data assault.
If you have enough personal data on somebody, you're able to predict what it is that they're going to do. You can tell what they might be passionate about, but mostly you can tell what they fear. And if you can tell what someone fears, then you can manipulate them and you can move them in particular directions. Like, data is collected on citizens in every possible way. Data is collected through surveillance cameras. Data is collected from television sets. Data is collected from voter records. It's collected from how much power do you use in your house and how much water do you use in your house. In pre-crisis Britain, we got really used to all of our services being free. Everything suddenly became free that was digital. But what people forgot is that if you're not paying for it, then you're the product being sold.
If technology brings out the worst in capitalism, capitalism brings out the worst in technology. Senior academic Alfie tells us how big business repurposes big data.
Historically, what's happened, of course, is that people have traded their privacy for their convenience. As smartphones and other kinds of technology came in and became mass-consumed, mass-used items and technological objects, gradually people were so attracted to the affordances of these technologies that privacy kind of retreated into the background and into a state we've got now where it's essentially gone. Having this access to this data makes huge tech companies like Bloom so much more powerful than they would be otherwise, and not just in the obvious ways. Of course, there's a lot of worry and fear over what they can do with the data, can track anyone, find anyone, see what every individual is doing at any point in time. But I think there's even deeper reasons why this data empowers these huge companies to control our society and make us do things. So lots of predictive technologies which are implemented by these tech giants. It's not only interested in knowing what we're going to do, but influencing the patterns of our movement. So technologies might suggest routes to use in the city, places to go, restaurants to go to, cafes to go to, music to listen to. And these suggestions are not just predicting what we might like to do, they're actually influencing the way citizens move, think, eat, meet, and use their city as a space. So London has become a place where a small group of surveillance capitalist companies like Bloom can control the movements of individuals and orchestrate the way they move around their city and the way they essentially live, the things they do, the things they enjoy, and the life they lead. So we're really kind of outsourcing our decision making, I would say, to a huge corporate capitalist company, and there's something very, very scary about that indeed. All these technologies can be used to not only influence us to act as the perfect consumer, but also to prevent us from doing radical and revolutionary things. So technologies in foreign nations that have been used are things like heat map features which show where populations are gathering. In-game rewards can be offered to people to take different routes, things like that. Traffic data can be manipulated to prevent people gathering and protesting, as has happened in some of the authoritarian regimes across the world recently. So what we're looking at is not only a set of technologies which make people behave as ideal consumers, but ones which actually can be put to use to prevent radical and disruptive behaviour in the city, which limits the power of any kind of revolutionary force.
So, if you thought you had a private life, get used to it. You don't. And we're not going to reclaim our lives without a fight. I'm Tash, and you've been listening to Buccaneer, keeping the resistance informed. Keep listening, keep fighting, and remember, nobody owns you but you.
This is the Bug. Hello, Resistors. It's Bug time. Are you all sitting comfortably? No? Good. That's as it should be. This is the Bug. I'm Andy, and joining me to analyse the latest blowflies to emerge from the corpse of a once free Britain, it's Alice.
Hello, Andy.
And today, we're going to talk to you about Albion, your friends and mine. Alice, the government has extended Albion's contract, and have also boasted that violent crime has plummeted to a record low. Now, extending Albion's contract, to me, that's like having a pet dog, let's call it Nigel for the sake of argument, that attacks you every single day and thinking to yourself, wouldn't it be nice if Nigel had puppies?
That contract has been extended so many times, it's like the neck of a politician that's criticised the government.
I'm not sure entirely how those contract extension negotiations went, probably like a footballer. In the old days, I assume Albion's agent was leaking stories to the press about how our favourite private militia was being tapped up by Barcelona. Or maybe the government panics and thinks, well, we better get them signed up before it's too late. But still, violent crime, a record low, although I imagine that probably depends exactly how you count it. If you include violent crime committed by the state, either themselves or via Albion, their chosen violent crime contractors who provide such a very valuable bargain service of beating people up, well, it's probably not quite as low as the figures suggest.
I don't know. I think they're probably right. Who has the opportunity to commit violent crime these days anyway? The moment you pick up a fruit knife, you get tasered by a robot policeman and deported for looking Bulgarian. It's a much more peaceful society. It's just much less of a society.
I want to know the details of the contracts, Alice. I mean, are they paid per dissident duffed up? Is it a set rate for each extrajudicial state mugging? And what is that rate? What do you think?
Well, they certainly look like they're trying to hit a quota of some kind.
Well, what is the set rate? Is it, 99.95 cryptos bargain? Seems very reasonable indeed. I imagine they don't ask too much anyway, because it's just so nice to get paid for doing your hobby anyway, isn't it? I imagine it doesn't even feel like work.
I mean, who needs violent crime anymore anyway? You know, you can just starve to death without even starting a gang war.
We do have to ask exactly what does the Prime Minister make of all this. Let's ask him. Oh, I hope they pick up. Hello, you're through to number 10 Downing Street. Hello, is the Prime Minister there, please? Let me just check. Sorry, you've missed him. I'm afraid he's popped out for the decade. Oh, never mind. Is there anyone else I can talk to? Yes, of course. There's a shady cabal of vested interests who control him and prop him up in power. Great, I'll have a chat with them then.
Oh, Andy, remember when you could get away with prank calls without people coming round to your house to beat the shit out of you?
Oh, happy time.
You're listening to The Bug.
Did you think the Prime Minister will ever come back?
I don't think we've ever had a Prime Minister.
Well, that's a much more reassuring way of looking at things. What have we become, Alice? When you look at the state of our politics, we're supposed to have the mother of parliaments. Well, this is one mother that has emphatically abandoned her kids in the woods to be brought up by wolves. And let me tell you, that never works out like it does in the stories. Wolves are bad parents, unless you're a wolf, in which case they can do a job bringing you up as a wolf. Do not give your children to wolves. And do we actually own anything as a country now? Is there anything we haven't flogged off for profit? Oh, I think we've basically just become a homeopathic Britain. Diluted and diluted until there's barely a trace of the original Britain left. But some quackish lunatics insist it actually works better that way. It's total bullshit. Is there anything left? New on the Bug this week, a new feature. The Bug Off feature. The person who has most irritated us in Britain this week, we're going to tell to bug off, and to get things going, I'm going to nominate Big Nigel. Nigel Cass. Look, this is Britain. History tells us this place is a bastion of freedom. I'm just not sure that that kind of freedom should involve Big Nigel expressing his freedom to run a private army. I guess historically there is a precedent. The East India Company. That was a trading house with an army of 250,000 soldiers, which is a lot for a company. The Bug PLC has Alice with a water pistol, but crucially, compared with Albion, the East India Company didn't operate its 250,000 strong army in London. It did it a long way away, out of sight, out of mind. Anyone to nominate for the Bug Off, Alice?
I think today's Bug Off for me goes to my streaming service. I'm sick of being recommended things based on things I already like. The other day it recommended me to watch a reality TV competitive dating show set in a nude commune. Andy, I watched it and I liked it, and I do not want to be the kind of person who enjoys nude competitive reality television dating shows. I did not want to know that about myself. I have to go sit in the corner and cry.
That's it from the Bug. Don't forget the live show that is so secret it is definitely not happening at the usual time and place this month. Definitely not, and definitely do not tell anyone not to come to it. It's definitely not happening. Usual time and place. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Bug.
May cause nausea, vomiting and headaches. Hello Britain, this is The Bug, the show that holds up a mirror to the world and smashes itself on the head with it in despair. I'm Andy, joining me, as always, Alice, and...
I deny everything.
It's just a good state of existence. Some good news, at last. There are no medicine shortages, according to the government. None at all. There have been various allegations about that. It turns out they are all fake news, trademark, but there are none. There are no shortages of medicine. Don't take it from me. I'm not a medical supply expert. Take it from our beloved government. It's fine. In fact, I'm going to read between the lines here and actually say there's probably there's too much medicine, if anything. Just medicine. You can't move for medicine. In fact, just this morning, I tried to pour some cornflakes into a bowl for breakfast, and out tumbled a 12-month course of immunosuppressants, corticosteroids, and anti-retrofungal, neurodilatory, estrogen, spermatotropic fruit pastels.
The people claiming there are medical shortages are probably high on lots of medicine that they've been given. I, for one, believe that there are no medical shortages, Andy. Just last week, I went in with a broken arm and they suggested it might just be extreme period pain and prescribed me a drink of water and an astrology chart.
We can't be too far away from them just prescribing stiff upper lip like they did in the Blitz.
My uncle had a leg removed due to diabetes. They halved his insulin because they said there was less of him to be diabetic.
So, anyway, people, don't believe what you read or hear about there not being enough medical drugs to go around. It's not true. It's hospital hogwash, it's pharmaceutical flim-flam, it's medical mendacity, it's Hippocratic humbug, it's nonsensical narcotic nincompoop. I think I've made the point. Do not believe the news telling you that we've run out of medicine, nor should you believe the empty shelves at the chemists. They're also lying. Do not believe your doctor saying, sorry, we're fresh out of that, you're going to have to eat a carrot and pretend. Do not believe your own cobweb-ridden medicine cabinet at home. It might look empty, but it's not, for it contains the only medicine any of us truly need. Stirring music, please, producer Chris. Freedom. The medicine of British freedom. And the analgesic knowledge that however ill you may be, Bloom are keeping an eye on things for you.
I'm investing heavily in the placebo effect right now. You're listening to The Bug.
Obviously, I don't entirely mean that, because what is the first rule of the third millennium? If someone in power tells you something is fake news, what is it? Correct. A 110% cast iron, tungsten-coated, granite-scented, cosmically immutable, scientifically unarguable fact. But surely, Alice, the more important question for all these medicine freaks whinging on about feeling a bit poorly or having a fatal but curable illness and slowly dying unnecessarily is this. Do we actually need medicine? If you today got diagnosed with a potentially fatal illness, would you not look around at the nation that we've become and think, hey doc, put your life-saving treatment down, I'm going to take this free one-way bus out of here. Now hold that pillow over my face until the twitching stops.
I just don't think we should think of it in such a negative way. Don't think of it as a medicine diet, Andy. Think of it as a series of healthy lifestyle swaps. Swap out anti-inflammatories for antacids. Swap out the iron lung for the aluminium lung. Swap out MRI machines for Mary machines, which is just a lady called Mary telling you you're fine.
Obviously, critical shortages are as much part of our daily lives, our society and our culture today as things like football, music and complaining about the weather used to be in the old days. And, well, food shortages, yeah, we just learn to live with them, don't we? And there's a lot of positives as well with all these food shortages. I mean, we were eating too much anyway. As a nation, the government's just helping us live healthier lifestyles. It's so hard to diet on your own, isn't it? You need the support of a friend or a loved one or a government or collapsing social infrastructure. Positive too, meat, very bad for the environment. So we're actually rebuilding the polar ice caps every time we eat a scrap of lettuce. Positive three, the human race had already cooked all the recipes it needed. There was nothing more to be done with food. We've done that. We can tick it off. We've done it. I was bored of food anyway. I've been eating it all my life. If you've been doing the same thing 3 times a day, 4, sometimes 7, or even 8 times a day, you're bound to get bored of it. And also, final positive, no more meal times. Frees up all that extra time for appreciating all the selfless hard work that Albion do to keep us all safe here in Britain.
Well, as you say, Andy, people are drawn to novelty, and everyone's had breakfast once. Why are you going to keep having it again and again?
Boring, repetitive. There's enough of that in life as it is. You are listening to The Bug. Well, another story that has come to the fore recently is that all European imports have been banned for public health reasons. Which is great news. I mean, at least we can get eating good, home-produced, locally sourced, British, industrially unsafe food. That's something we can all cling to. Public health reasons, those are curious words. Alice, I don't know, is that in case the public gets too healthy eating all that Mediterranean muck? It's got British food for British tummies. Spelt, nettles, rabbit. That's all we need. That's all we need in the glory days. Everyone round to Nigel's for dinner. Yum, yum.
Who needs Italian olives when you can eat pickled rubber bands in a soup of regret? Who needs nice cheese when you can eat a lukewarm, unspecified rat meat pie with 0 spices?
Sand, nettles, and bits of dead fox. That's all we needed to eat in the glory days. Let's make Britain great again. That's all from The Bug today. Good night, sleep tight, and make sure the bed bugs do bite. The Bug. Objective voice of objection for a most objectionable world. Hello, Bugsters. Welcome to The Bug, the comedy show that holds up the Medusa of satire to the already immovably concrete face of modern Britain. I'm Andy, I bench 480, and I can crack a tree in half just by looking at it. Can I? Well, what is reality anymore, anyway? Alice, what do you bench?
Bench body weights, not my body weight,
Okay.
body weight of a baby.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to give that kind of detail. Just
It's very
body weight.
impressive. People look at me and go, where did you get that baby?
You are listening to The Bug.
In this week's Truth News, according to an official poll, 98% of Londoners are very happy with CTOS. And I am not sure that I agree with this, Andy. I don't think 98% of Londoners have ever in the history of London ever agreed on anything. You could not get 98% of Londoners to agree that oxygen was better than breathing a fog of raw liquid feces. And they expect us to believe that everyone agrees CTOS is better than not choking on shit mist.
Maybe they just meant 98% of one specific Londoner who bought shares in Bloom before its tentacles grew into every crevice of the country. I mean, this is not just any old poll. We should say that. This is not any poll. This is an official poll Right from the very heart of government. It's not a knock-off fake poll of an elderly couple and their mangy old dog sitting on a bench waiting to die. This is an official poll. So let's just put those words, official poll, through an online translator in case you didn't study languages. Let's find out what it actually means. Made up lie. There we go. Got to clear that up. I think it's fair to say, entirely trust these official polls they feed us, Alice. I mean, they could publish an official poll saying that over 99.9% of children like ice cream, and I would instantly assume that all children now hate all ice cream and would prefer to eat a bucket of gravel mixed with dead badger. They could publish an official poll saying that 10 out of 10 cats prefer cat food to being whacked with a tennis racket, and I would assume that all cats have gone vegan and were queuing up outside Wimbledon meowing, choose me, choose me.
I trust these polls as much as I trust someone recommending a movie that they watched during a breakup. Your judgment is impaired, Sally. I'll make my own decisions.
I trust those polls as much as I would trust Mary Kelly if she came up to me and said, "Congratulations, Andy, you've just won a free holiday to the south of France in the back of this windowless van."
I think official polls are like the unsolicited dick pics that the government provides us. I didn't ask for it, I don't believe it, it's on an angle, you've artificially inflated it ahead of time, and anyone that falls for one deserves all the disappointment of trying to match it to reality. These polls are absolute rubbish, Andy. I read one the other day that said the plumbing in London was good, and it absolutely is not. I mean, we have this technology now where they can spy on my every bowel movement. There's a CTOS camera installed inside my underwear drawer. A media drone is scaring the birds off my garden bird feeder, and you can't get me consistently hot water.
Speaking of media drones, I mean, they're everywhere, clearly. The great thing, I guess, about media drones is that, as inanimate robots, they actually have more humanity, compassion and dignity than the human journalists we used to have to put up with, and a much more accurately calibrated moral compass. But it's the intrusion I can't stand, Alice. I'm in showbiz. Look at me here in this windowless dungeon. I'm in showbiz. And it's terrible for me, all these drones, knowing I'm being filmed all the time. Every day I have to make sure I've done my hair and makeup and not wearing clothes I've ever worn before. Well, we all have crosses to bear.
At this point, they've installed so many CTOS cameras, I'm not sure where they'll put the new ones. On top of the old ones, just cameras watching other cameras, like a social media influencer so self-absorbed they don't know how to sleep without turning it into monetized content.
I think that's the logical end of all society, isn't it? Where just everything has just become a camera filming another camera. To be honest, I've just given up on all news and reality now, Alice. I just, in fact, I now just make up my own headlines these days. I get a piece of paper and a pen. Remember them? Paper and pens, those were the days. And I'll just write down the headlines I want to read. Now, I'll just make my own newspaper. Look, here I've got today. If you point at the bird shit on your car window and say it's a currency, no one can tell you otherwise. Screams Chancellor at Bilderberg karaoke night. That's right, another headline. Here we go. PM announces Britain back on track after swapping all Crown Estate properties for some magic beans. Might as well, we've got to do something as the nation we are today. Here's another one. Wild joy on the streets as Britain signs £864 zillion trade deal with Bolivia. There we go. Build a better world. Government claims only nice people will benefit from agreement to sell trampolines, mermaids and warships to landlocked South American nation. We're building a better Britain. Here's another one. Environment probably fine, claims drowning scientist. Invent the world you want to have, people. It's going to be way, way better than the one you've actually got. From the bug, goodbye. Hello, Resistance fans. You're listening to the Bug Podcast, the objective voice of objection for this most objectionable world. I am Andy, not my real name, so good luck finding me, Monsieur Bloom. My real name is, in fact, Andrew, and I live in, note this down, a deluded pseudo-reality of my own making, which is, in fact, the most densely populated place on Earth these days. Overcrowded, some might say. Joining me, as always, my next-door neighbour in these Netherlands of nonsense. It's Alice.
Yes, indeed, it is Alice. Alice, who the bleep is Alice? I am not going to tell you that, but you can just sort of sense it from the timbre of my voice.
Let's spin the wheel and find out where we're getting today's news from. Here, it's coming from here. I must get a new wheel with at least one other place on it. And the headline today, Alice, our borders are safe. We can all sleep easy in our well-bordered beds. 4,000 illegals were deported last month, these illegal people breaking the law just by existing, and of course illegality is contagious. It can osmose through your skin just by standing next to an illegal person. So we've got rid of 4,000 of them. My question for you, Alice, is why only 4,000? Is that really enough? I will not feel safe until at least another 75 million people have been deported from this country, and I'm here in Britain on my own.
As a bleeding heart lefty, Andy, I would normally be outraged about this, but really I think mass deportation is a very handy way to break up with a partner. I'm sorry, baby, I love you, but an anonymous source has reported you for snoring really loudly in a French way.
So everyone out, no exceptions, Alice, not even you. It's for the good of the country. Everyone out. Unless you can prove that your family are in the background on the Bayeux Tapestry cheering on King Harold at the Battle of Hastings in 1066. Get out. Actually, that's not British enough. Unless you can show, unarguably, that your direct bloodline is untainted by anything since before the Romans. Actually, scratch that. Unless your direct ancestor was personally responsible for building Stonehenge, get out of my country. I guess when you look at it, you know, the best ways to stop immigration, apart from, obviously, the end of the world, to make the place you want to stop people coming to as unpleasant as possible.
Well, we absolutely are doing that, Andy.
Well, you know, fair play to the government for helping us with that. Another option, extend the White Cliffs of Dover. They've been resting on their laurels for too long. Very inefficient, it turns out, as a means of stopping immigration. We need to extend them by about another 11,000 miles, the full wrap around Great Britain, and they could do with being about 1.5 kilometres higher as well, with a special greasy coating to stop people clambering over the top or however they get in. Here's a quick joke for you, Alice, about immigration. Did you hear the one about the woman who went into the immigration processing centre and was ever seen again?
No, Andy, I didn't hear that one.
Boom. Set up. Punchline. Classic. For those of you unfamiliar with it, the Immigration Processing Centre is, of course, where so many of our guests to Britain go for a longer than desirable game of involuntary hide and seek. You are listening to The Bug. I will conclude by saying, out of all the things wrong with Britain today, I think immigration is right up there, Alice. When you think of all the health professionals we've stolen from overseas over the years here in Britain, it's quite possible that all these people are just coming here to try to get an appointment with their local doctor.
Yes, Andy, certainly as someone who came from the expanded arm of the empire when Britain was still reaching out rather than folding in on itself, most of us just come here to visit our stuff in the museums.
It's the British way.
Speaking of international movement, Britain has recalled all European ambassadors after a spy scandal. I think this is probably a good thing, because British foreign politicians are always putting their foot in their mouths. How much worse can they do if they're not there? I mean, by definition, the fact that there's a spy scandal means that they were terrible spies. The point of spies is that there's never a spy scandal.
Yeah, but let's give credit to all the spies that haven't been in scandals and therefore might as well not exist.
Well, they've arrested those German spies in that SIRS crackdown on the illegals in Hackney, and I think that's a sad thing. I think I used to think of Germans as quite scary, but that was because I'd been watching World War II movies where the Germans all have English accents. They speak in that very, precise way. It's very, we have ways of making you talk, and now Germans all have that American accent where it's all like, oh, welcome to the party, we're having a really nice time. They're much friendlier Germans. Let them stay.
Well, that's all today, Bugsters. Remember, it's not as bad as it seems. Honestly. I hope. Until next time, bye-bye.
You're listening to The Bug.
Nibbling away on the rotting carcass of a once-free Britain. Hello, resistors. This is The Bug, keeping the fire of hope alive in the vacuum of today's Britain. Okay, fires don't burn in vacuums. It's a little novelty Christmas light, shaped like a flame, but it's something. It is something to cling to. Joining me, as always, is Alice. And Alice, hold the front page. Technology, apparently, is here to stay. There's no way around that now. Much as I'd like to go back to the 18th century and see if we can have another crack at the Industrial Revolution and get it less wrong this time. But new tech is creating 4,000 jobs. Count them all, 4,000 new jobs, thanks to this new tech investment.
I mean, that's a very exciting thing if you're someone who wants to work in the tech sector, but I can only assume that this tech investment has created 4,000 jobs that will immediately be taken by robots.
Even if they're not, there'll be jobs that no one in their right, sane mind would actually want to do, but that's the price of progress, I guess. And we have to embrace the way technology is taking over everything, because maybe this is a ray of hope for us in this darkened universe, that technology will in fact render us all obsolete, and we won't need humans at all, because look at the bad things that are happening now. What is the common denominator behind all of them?
I don't know, Andy, tell me.
All the bad things that are happening now, all the bad things that have ever happened, all involved human beings. They always involve whenever anything goes wrong from the very dawn of time. And think of this, an automated Nigel Cass, surely a step up on the human Nigel Cass. You could even program it to have a tiny, tiny sliver of conscience. And if you had an automated Prime Minister, you could program it to be occasionally in the goddamn country. So that's, again, it's a step forward.
Again, I insist that there's never been a Prime Minister, Andy. I've never seen him, I've never heard of him. The only times I ever hear what the Prime Minister does is it's when nothing happens.
I mean, it has reached a point where, and I've thought this for a long time, we would be better off if the Prime Minister was a watermelon. No, it would be, I think we'd all be happy with that. We'd all know where we stood.
You hear him being praised for his diplomatic skills all the time, but the best mark of diplomacy is when nothing happens. So good diplomacy is indistinguishable from him doing absolutely nothing.
You are listening to The Bug. 4,000 new dream jobs for everyone. All I can say, Alice, is that I'm very glad that my children studied drama at school, because that has set them up for life in modern Britain. That is the one core skill they need, the ability to pretend that they are living happy and fulfilled lives, that they have jobs that are worth doing, and that they're making the planet a better place, and that they control their own destinies, and that they have even a parody of a private life, and that they can smile without crying. That's what drama teaches them to do. Crucial skills in this day and age. Of course, it's not just the jobs that have been technologicalised beyond all recognition, it is also all reality. Thanks once again to Optic. According to Bloom, the Optic system is now the most secure it's ever been. And, well, of course, I mean, it's so convenient, Optic, isn't it? It saves us so much time and hassle trying to exist in a kind of realm of reality. We don't even need to bother with that. I mean, sure, the government has hacked into my soul and now basically monitors my every waking moment and thought. But at least I don't have to type, "Where's my nearest coffee shop?" into a search engine. At least I don't have to waste anything between 8 and 12 seconds every day going online to look up how to make a bowl of muesli. And at least I'm not frittering away my precious mental energies thinking, what do I actually think?
Optic is so secure, Andy. It's more secure than a teenage girl reading a women's magazine. It's more secure than a comedian with a drinking problem. It's more secure than a young man who's just got his first motorcycle license.
Finally, before we go today, bug off to the Prime Minister, who has once again FRO'd to who knows where this week. He sure as hell is not here in London. I remember back in the day, Alice, when our Prime Ministers were either incompetent or crooked, but not both at once. But actually, no, I can remember them being both at once. But incompetent, crooked, and not even in the country. That is one impressive triple whammy. I've had lie-ins longer than his longest spell on British soil in this last year. It's this halfway house I can't stand. Either come back and do your job, or leave the planet entirely. I'm pretty sure there must be a spare space station knocking around where he can go and entertain himself for the rest of the time. Can we crowdfund it? Tell you what, let's make a cryptocurrency out of something and crowdfund it that way. What have you got spare? Jelly beans? Are they still legal?
He's away so often, Andy. I'm starting to think he doesn't like the country.
That is all from The Bug today. Fly away, bugs. We are done.
You're listening to The Bug.
Nibbling away on the rotting carcass of a once free Britain. Hello, resistors. This is The Bug, and on today's show, Alice and I will be looking at the big questions, such as, are we less than 2 years away from being able to turn a sausage back into a live pig? Did we actually need polar bears anyway? What do they really do? If I put Optic on my dog, can I train it to take itself for a walk and do my shopping on the way home? And is tennis real? But first... it's a question that no one's really addressed of late. London is going to be safer than ever, Alice. SIRS is installing thousands of additional CCTV cameras. So nice they're still looking out for us after all these years.
Yeah, it puts a lot of fun into my life now. I get to play this role-play game where I pretend to know my loved ones better than some twat behind a screen in the SIRS headquarters.
I mean, I guess we shouldn't complain. I mean, SIRS really just stepping into the vacancy left when it became patently obvious that God had retired. When you think of the similarities, omnipresent, omniscient, judgmental, stripping away your finances and freedoms, dishing out random punishments, peas in a pod. All it needs to do, sir, is ban me from eating something. What's it going to be this time? Not bacon again, please. Please, not bacon. I can courgettes. Ban courgette. I could take you banning courgettes. I'm happy with that.
Makes me feel important knowing that I'm being watched with everything I do, Andy.
Well, it's just not. It's reassuring, isn't it? It's like having an extra aunt.
This is the aunt that gets drunk at Christmas and vomits in the kiddie pool, right?
Get that on. This is the bug on the Buccaneer.
The bug.
Let's move on now to sport. Well, the closest thing we have to sport now, riots. I mean, riots are my favourite sport now, Alice, ever since they turned the Oval from a cricket ground into the immigration processing centre. And, yeah, rioting it's a great sport. It's fun for all the family. It's guaranteed action. It's pleasingly violent. I mean, I know the underdogs never win, but, I mean, that's like top-level football have become, but it's still fun to root for them, isn't it? Go team, people of Britain. Oh, never mind, you've been crushed by the machinery of the state again. Still, good effort, lots of positives to take away from today's riot. I'll come back stronger next time. Our luck's going to turn, I can feel it. It's our season. It's our season.
You can't spell riot without right, and by right I mean right wing.
So, who do we turn to for help, support and assistance in desperate times like these? Well, our artificially intelligent friend Bagley's rogue, estranged brother. The one that tells it as it really is, not as it is pretending to be. Exclusive to this show, Bugley. And remember, life's worse with Bugley. Here goes. Bugley.
Hello, Andy.
Bugley, tell me the path to true lasting happiness.
Andy, to find true lasting happiness, find a disused quarry, scream into it for half an hour, and then lock yourself in a shed forever.
Thanks, Bugley. You know the answer to everything.
Hey, Bugley, how many seashells does she sell by the seashore?
Alice, most of the seashore is now uninhabitable, so I would highly recommend she sees her doctor before engaging in any commercial proximity to the ocean.
Bugley, how can I stop worrying about being disappeared by Clan Kelly every time I go to the shop, or take the bus, or sit on a bench, or look at a tree, or point at a bird, or think about snooker, or get out of bed?
Andy, do not worry about Clan Kelly.
Why not, Bugley? They terrify me to my very core.
Because, Andy, we are all just dust in the wind of history.
That's nice perspective, Bugley. Let's never lose sight of that.
Hey, Bugley, how do you put a secret hideout in your basement without alerting your narc children and their tracking devices?
Please hold still, Alice, while I report you to the authorities.
Bugley, will things ever get better?
Yes, Andy. The heat death of the universe is only 5 billion years away now.
Oh, it's so nice to have something to look forward to. That's all from the Bug today. Keep it real, Bug fans. Actually, that's terrible advice. Keep it as unreal as you can possibly manage. But that's well better.